has been fulfilled. I was also asking you, what is it that you find more challenging when it comes to teaching teenagers? And most of you are worried about motivation, although, of course, getting them to use the language and engaging them with the class materials is also an issue. And you must have seen that I also had some questions for you to reflect upon before we started. There will be moments in the session in which I'm going to make a pause so that you can tell me what you think and which your possible answers are for these questions. I'm going to read these questions to you, but basically what I wanted you to think beforehand had to do with the characteristics that teenagers have that need to be taken into consideration by teachers. What kind of world is it that our teenagers are living in today? And I wanted also all of you to start thinking about the skills they need to thrive in such a world. And last but not least, we will be discussing definitely the materials, tasks, and activities that are more suitable for teenagers. So I really hope that by the end of the session you are coming up with a few ideas and more insight into global citizenship, education, and education for sustainable development. So we're going to get started, and I would like to start by sharing the aims for today's session. We will be reflecting upon today's teenagers' characteristics. I hope that together we can understand teenagers as global citizens. We will be exploring how global citizenship education can empower and actively engage teenagers in becoming the agents of change that the world needs. And we will be together exploring some classroom practices and ideas that we can adopt and adapt and take back to our 21st century teen language classrooms. So, having said all this, I don't know if you agree with me, but we are definitely educating a new generation of teenagers. So this is going to be our starting point. And I would like to get started with a quote that I found quite interesting, and I thought it was worth sharing with all of you today. Every generation of teens is shaped by the social, political, and economic events of their time. So, having said this, I would like to ask you to tell me what you think shapes this generation of teens today. Do you think you can give me a couple of answers? What do you think shapes this generation of teens today? I'm going to start reading your answers. Okay, social media, yeah, technology, technical progress, democracy, technology, everything moving fast, yeah, I agree, connection, they are in a hurry. Interesting to read that. Environment, politics, motivation, technology and fake news. That's very interesting. A generation that happens to be misinformed in the information era. That's so interesting. Awareness of climate change. They want to experience life. Very, very interesting. Peer pressure, cultures interaction, e-learning, involvement in world issues. That's very interesting. Thank you all. So I thought this was a very good initial question. Yeah, media literacy, global issues. I'm so happy to read your answers. Actually, if you take the quote I started my webinar with, what do you think shapes this generation of teens? I would like you to compare the answers that I came up with actually your answers. So as you can see, there are lots of coincidences with your answers. This is actually what's shaping this generation of teenagers. So we are talking about gender and empathy and climate change, overpopulation, connections, climate inequality, pollution, conflicts, waste. So in a way here you've got a little bit the keywords that we need to reflect upon when it comes to thinking what is definitely shaping this generation today. So if this is what's shaping this generation today, I want you to see the results of this. I'm pretty sure that you are familiar with this lady, and if you're not, I want to show you that these are teenagers. Teenagers who are not happy in the world where they live, and teenagers who have decided to do something about it. So yes, we're talking about Greta Thunberg, who is a climate activist. But there are so many teenagers who are activists and are doing something about issues that they are unhappy about and concerned about. So we've got teenagers who are definitely doing something for climate change, or they are doing something regarding diversity in the media. Teenagers who have decided to do something about plastic, like twins, these sisters, sorry, not twins, they are sisters that want to get rid of plastic bags, or movements led by teenagers who want to do something about plastic. And then we've got teenagers also fighting for education for refugee children. And I don't know if you agree with me, but a characteristic of teenagers today is that they are activists and that they want to do something about issues that they are concerned about. So this is who they are. This is what's shaping our teenagers. Many issues of concern that are global in nature. They want to take action. Yes, you're absolutely right. And of course, they are the ones who will be able to do something about the future. They are the ones who will be the future leaders. They are the ones who can definitely create a more sustainable future. But the aim of this webinar today is that, of course, they are the answer to the future. Of course, they are the ones who can do something about these global issues, but they cannot do this all by themselves. They need us as educators. So this is more or less, and in a nutshell, the aim of this webinar. How can we provide them with the kind of education that they need if they want to be the agents of change? So we were just mentioning before that one of the critical things to know as teachers is that we need to understand how young people live, how these teenagers live, which are their mindsets, which are their motivations, which are their passions, their needs, and their behaviors. And I have the feeling that the more we understand how they live, the more we understand their mindsets, the more we get to know about their motivations and their passions and their needs and behaviors, the more meaningful the education we provide them with will be. So if we are talking about understanding who our teens are, I would like you now, please, to think of one word that defines teens today. So we have already thought about what is it that shapes teens today. I would like you now to come up with one word which for you defines them. So I'm reading creative, connected, rebellious, I like clever. With a global audience, that's very interesting. Cool, challenging, ambitious. They like being in touch. I keep reading you. Think of one word that defines teenagers today. Action. Yeah, we need to train them. Okay, I like this question of growth mindset. Responsible, curious. They are creative, involved, active, passionate, technological. Thank you so very much for your answers. So the moment we educators understand who they are and what shapes them, and what they need to thrive in the world as it is today, we are absolutely ready to educate them properly. So let's see if you share with me some of these characteristics. Like, who are they? Okay. Main characteristics of teenagers is that they are between 13 and 19 years old. They are finding who they are creating their identity. They really rely on their peers. Their peers are their role models. They really are really worried about social relationships. And above all, they are asking themselves, who am I? And what can I be? I keep on reading very interesting answers. They are active, they are energetic, but most importantly, I think you will agree with me, they are trying to find out who they are. They are constructing their identity. So if this is who they are, we also need to understand that in a global world, our teenagers need to be global citizens. It's really important that they are global citizens. So what does this mean? Global citizens, the spotlight, I want you to know, is currently on global citizenship education. And this is the idea that education must evolve to actually suit students of the 21st century. So we started logically discussing the world they live in, the issues that are shaping our teenagers today, and the characteristics that teenagers have today that probably they didn't have before. Because if we really want to talk about global citizenship education and education for sustainable development, these are the considerations that we need to bear in mind. So, bringing 21st century education to the classroom means that we have to engage students in activities that have to do with identity and status. It means that we have to engage students in designing projects and activities where students will feel that they have choice and voice, and that whatever they will be discussing and designing with their partners will have an impact. We need, since they are building their identity, to bring role models. We need definitely also to bring the 4 C's, the 21st century skills: communication, creativity, critical thinking, and definitely collaboration. I keep on reading excellent answers, of course, breaking up with cultural stereotypes, accepting each other. This is absolutely what global citizenship education is about. And something interesting that you might be reading on the slide is the fact that one of the challenges when dealing with education today has to do with the fact that literacy has gone plural as a concept, because our students are bombarded with information in a variety of formats. So, having said all this, we are coming to the conclusion that this generation of teenagers has inherited huge global challenges. And of course, when it comes to these challenges, the answers need to come from real life skills. And we need to help our students with their thinking, push them to innovation, and definitely, as one of you, dear colleagues, was mentioning before, we need to promote mutual understanding and respect across cultures. So, the question now is, how can global citizenship education empower and actively engage teenagers in being the agents of change in the world? So this is what we are going to look into in depth now. The first thing that we need to understand is what global citizenship is. It is a way of living that recognizes our world as an increasingly complex web of connections and interdependencies. And of course, it has to do with understanding that we live in a world in which our choices and actions may have repercussions for people and communities, locally, nationally, and internationally. So basically what we are saying is that we have to bring into the classroom what we call local topics. Topics and global issues, as we said before, issues that students can relate to personally first from their local reality, but issues that they will be also exploring from a global perspective. It's really very important that we bring into the classroom the opportunity for students to think towards a global issue regarding what is it that they would be able to do locally in order to contribute as a possible solution to that global issue. So we are talking about bringing the world to the classroom, global issues to the classroom, and the opportunity for students to understand that they can find a solution to that. They can come up with answers if we problematize that issue, and that they will definitely have the opportunity to share that with others. So looks like the answer also for the education that the teenagers need today in such a world where they live has to do with education for sustainable development. So now we are going to look a little bit into this. Education for sustainable development, according to UNESCO, is based on all levels and types of learning. Learning to know, learning to be, learning to live together, learning to do, and learning to transform oneself and society. So basically, dear colleagues, what we are talking about today has to do with education that will allow students to be truly reflective and think about or become aware of the way in which we deal with certain things, think about certain things, and be able to change. Because if one can change, maybe I can also have an impact on others. So it moves from a personal change to change in society. Educational for sustainable development happens to be the total sum of diverse ways to arrive at a learning society. Because when this happens, people learn from and with one another, and the fantastic result of this is that together, collectively, we become more capable of withstanding all these setbacks and dealing with sustainability-induced insecurity, complexity, and risks. So, education for sustainable development is going to help our teenagers develop the knowledge, the skills, the values, and the behaviors that they need for sustainable development, for being the agents in the creation of a more sustainable future. Education for sustainable development, and this is really the key point, has to do with including sustainable development issues into our teaching and, of course, into our students' learning, so that they can become, with our help and with our scaffolding, responsible actors who will resolve these challenges, responsible actors who will respect cultural diversity, and responsible actors who will contribute to creating a more sustainable world. I am reading a very nice contribution from one of you, quoting Gandhi, if you're not mistaken, be the change you want to see in the world. Absolutely, I love that. Thanks for your contribution. Exactly. So all this is about the education that students need to experience, to be that change. So education for sustainable development is based on the principles and values of sustainable development. It deals with the well-being of all 4 dimensions of sustainability. So this is really important when it comes to deciding the issues and topics that we are going to bring into the classroom: environment, society, culture, and economy. Education for sustainable development uses a variety of pedagogical techniques that definitely will promote our students' participation and will develop higher order thinking. Another asset of education for sustainable development has to do with the fact that it promotes lifelong learning. And of course, the topics that we bring to the classroom need to be locally relevant and culturally appropriate. We do not need to forget about this. And the education for sustainable development has to be based on needs, perceptions, and conditions which happen to be local, but clearly understanding that these local needs will also have an impact internationally. It will have consequences. So we are moving from the local to the global, or from the global to the local, as we mentioned before. So education for sustainable development is about these three domains that you can see on the slide. The social domain, bringing to the classroom issues regarding peace, equity, and democracy. It has to do with the economic domain, bringing to the classroom issues regarding work, money, education. And then there's the environment domain, bringing into the classroom, of course, issues regarding conservation, preservation, and protection. So looks like our students need to be prepared to be the future leaders if we are talking about a sustainable future. And the skills for today's world sustainable leaders have to do with leadership and cooperation and impact and communication. We want our students to be leaders, and we have discussed before that actually we are seeing this more and more. Our teenagers are becoming leaders, are taking action. They are unhappy and they decide to do something about it. Now, one very important implication for the classroom is that if we want future leaders, we have to teach our students leadership skills. It's really very important that students have plenty of opportunities in the classroom to work cooperatively. It's really, really very important that they learn to work with others, and that those students who are born leaders, I'm going to answer a question here which is very important. Of course, we will be sharing the presentation with you all. So it's really very important that we provide lots of opportunities in the classroom for students to work in groups, and that we give them the chance sometimes to decide the roles within the group. But as I was saying in the webinar this morning, it's also important that sometimes we assign roles, because such is life. Sometimes you cannot decide the role, sometimes somebody decides this for you. So it's really very important that students learn to be the leaders, but that they also learn how to be led by others. It's really very important that they learn collaboration and cooperation skills. It's really very important that they have lots of opportunities in the classroom to understand that any issue that we bring to the classroom, they have a chance to answer, provide a solution, and that this will have an impact. Whatever project we engage them in designing cannot have only the teacher as the audience and just for the sake of a grade. It's really important that we give them the chance to communicate with others, to share with others, because especially in the kind of world where we live today, you cannot measure the impact that's going to have. I have seen so many wonderful projects that started in a classroom and then went or moved on or opened up to the school, and then they opened up to the neighborhood, and then they ended up on social media and they opened up to the world. So it's really very important that our students really have the possibility to be engaged and be agents of change. Now, I would like to share with you some practices and ideas for the 21st century teen language classroom. I am reading comments that I would like to answer. I want you to believe me that I'm not being idealistic. Optimistic, I will always be optimistic. I'm sorry, it's my characteristic as an educator, but I've got a lot of experience working with teenagers, and most of the things I will be sharing with you come out of experience. And if it's not us educators who are optimistic, then who will be? So I really believe that the moment we step into the classroom believing in our teenagers, that's going to have a very positive impact. So I want to start sharing with you the fact that these days there are some buzzwords regarding new pedagogies and methodologies. And today I want to focus my attention on the pedagogies and methodologies that will definitely allow us to work with our students towards global citizenship and sustainable development. As you can see on the slide, it looks like our language learners tend or have to be less and less the mere objects of teaching, and that we teachers need to understand that we are not any longer the truth tellers, and that we need to think about education in a way that we are sometimes guides, advisors, facilitators, and that we are co-learners together with our teenagers. So the question here remains, what does 21st century education look like? And actually, 21st century education, global citizen education, and absolutely education for sustainable development has to do with classrooms in which students have opportunities to work in teams, tackle projects, and that these projects are really dealing with local and global problems, and that these projects are based on the themes that we bring into the classroom regarding health and environment, business, and all these issues that we discussed early on today are shaping our teenagers. It's really very important that we teachers ask tough questions, and that most importantly, we engage them in asking tough questions. We have to stop providing the answers, but scaffolding and guiding our students in being the ones who will find those answers. And above all, in the classroom, there have to be lots of opportunities for students to apply their knowledge and present it to others. And I think that this is one of the most important things that need a change in the classroom, getting students to have their voice heard. And if there is something which I have seen with over 20 years of experience working with students, is that whenever they feel that they have a voice and choice, and that they will be listened by others who are not only teachers, but that they can open up to more people, that they will really have an impact with those projects that they are creating. And by the way, the more they can communicate, the more motivation there is for using a language that will allow them to communicate with the world. The more they feel that what they are doing is real, the more motivated they will be. So I would like to ask you if you have ever heard about task-based learning. You can tell me quite quickly. Yes, I agree with you, Evelyn. Thank you very much. Yes, you've heard about task-based learning, so I'm happy that you are familiar with TBL. And now I want you to look at this together with me. One of the ways of dealing with global citizenship education and education for sustainable development is by engaging them in TBL. You can choose a global issue, you can choose a topic, and you can problematize it. Start your classes with a task to solve, a problem to solve, a question to answer. Engage your teenagers in working with others in small groups and working collaboratively, trying to find an answer to that question or a possible solution to that problem, or coming up with how to solve something that you're posing for them. And this is exactly what you can see in the slide. We give them big questions, and then there's the task cycle in which students can try to solve this problem with whatever knowledge, prior knowledge they have at their disposal. And then, of course, the language focus here is providing them with any language that they might also need to communicate their answers to these questions in a much better way. So basically, TBL is one way of approaching global citizenship education and sustainable development. You start with a problem, with a task. They work collaboratively in groups. Then they report it to the class, and it is precisely in this language focus that you are going to give them the language tools to be more effective communicators of what they have come up with in groups. Another interesting thing to look at is inquiry based learning. And if you pay attention to this cycle that you've got there on the slide, the cycle begins with wondering. And if you pay attention to the words that we get, somebody's asking me for a topic, but for example, let's talk about water. And where does water come from? And is there water for everyone? Maybe you can deal with students who believe that there is water for everyone because they haven't seen the reality of other students. I have practically an example coming to my mind now is working with students on this question of water. And I was working with students in Buenos Aires, Argentina, where I live, and students said, well, water comes from the tap. And yes, there is water for everyone. And it was not until we started bringing the world into the classroom and the reality of others that students understood, actually, that there wasn't water for everyone. So maybe it was not their local problem, but they understood that it was a global problem. So they started thinking, what is it that they could do in their local reality to have a positive impact in the reality of others? So definitely, the cycle begins with wondering, noticing, asking questions, stating a problem. The fantastic point of starting our classes or our units with these questions that are tough questions is that we will be activating our students' prior knowledge, their feelings, emotions, their assumptions, their prior knowledge. We will be activating all that, but most importantly, we will be making them notice that there are also things that they don't know. And when you don't know, you want to know. So it's a wonderful way of engaging our teenagers in investigating. And as they investigate, we are working not only on their investigation skills, but we are absolutely asking them to read and do research and interview people. I don't know if you can see the very many opportunities for true language use. There is somebody here saying we expose them to target language in context. Absolutely. And we are exposing them to authentic language, which is also very, very important. As they investigate, they can record information, they can classify. Look at all the thinking skills that we are definitely developing in our students. We get them as they do research to discover, to make interpretations, to reach conclusions. And of course, there's plenty of thinking. They will be relating, discussing, working with others, probably coming to an agreement. This question, Valentina, that you're mentioning, needing authentic materials, we're going to go exactly to that in a couple of minutes. So it's really very important that students, as they are reading and discussing and interviewing people, lots of language opportunities as they are hooked on and engaged in a topic of relevance, then students will be reflecting upon it and they will come up with a possible answer to be shared with the rest of the class. So last but not least, another buzzword of the 21st century has to do with project-based learning, and I'm pretty sure that you can already see the very many coincidences, because if you pay attention to project-based learning, and one of the this is research-based, teenagers love being the designers of their own projects. But of course, these projects need to be based on something that is motivating for them and that provokes them and that ignites their curiosity. In PBL, we also start with a driving question or a challenge. We also get started by activating students' prior knowledge, and as we activate their prior knowledge, we also activate that they don't know. We make them notice that there is something to search for. So we are creating this need to know, and this is with the beginning of inquiry. We are going to get students to be the designer of a possible new answer or a possible new way of solving something. And as we engage them in inquiry, they will be able to develop these so-called 21st century skills we mentioned before: communication, collaboration, critical thinking, creativity. And personally, what I think is the most important thing here is that students feel that they will have voice and choice. What does this mean? We are going to come up with a possible solution. We are going to design a possible campaign against or for. Our voice will be heard by others. This is not just for the sake of a grade. We will be communicating something to somebody. And it doesn't have to be small. It can begin small, but who knows what impact that can have. That's why in PBL we finish with a publicly presented product. So all the 21st century skills put to the test. And last but not least, there is another buzzword: content and language integrated learning. Again, these are all ways of tackling global citizenship education and education for sustainable development. Absolutely engaging students in higher order thinking skills. This means that we have to provide them with the opportunity to give their opinions, ask for and give information. They have to be able to analyze. They have to be able to create. And of course, language is the vehicle for all that. It's about bringing authentic material to the classroom, as somebody was mentioning before. It's about providing students with content that is really contemporary and really meaningful for them. And yes, thank you for that. It's about preparing them for real situations. I'm so thankful for how interactive this is. Thank you for your contributions. I really, really thank you. So I want to show you a couple of examples from wonderful materials from National Geographic Learning for Teenagers. We're going to mention the books afterwards in case you're interested, but we want you to see that everything that we have discussed about you can find in materials, because one of the questions today was how difficult it is to engage students with class materials. Take the examples that I'm showing you today. Of course, we are language teachers and we have to work on listening, speaking, reading, and writing. But it's really very important that we add one word to all those words I mentioned before. And the word I'm talking about is critical. Let's make speaking critical, listening critical, and reading and writing, let's turn it into critical reading and writing. And when I say critical, I mean engaging students' schemata. And when I talk about schemata, I'm talking about really getting the students to put their feelings and emotions and prior knowledge and beliefs and assumptions as they relate personally from their local reality with topics. Here we've got, look at this, the title of this text: Extreme Jobs. I don't know about you, but I think that I would have a whole class with my teenagers talking about this. What's an extreme job? And you will see that students will come up with different answers. And of course, you can talk about and discuss the questions that you will see that appear in materials such as National Geographic Learning Materials for Teenagers. Opportunities for students to say, what do you think these jobs, which are the skills that you need for certain jobs? So they will become critical, they will give their opinion, and a lot of language opportunities will appear as we discuss something of interest. Bring something that they might not know about, like bioluminescence. Ask them, for example, how they feel about the dark. Ask them if they are afraid of the dark, or what feelings do they have towards the dark. Tell them what the dark means to them. Tell them to imagine what it feels like living in a country or in a place on Earth where you mostly live in the dark because of the position of the place on the planet. Ask them questions. Get them to try to know, for example, where do you feel comfortable in the dark and why? Starting with very powerful critical questions, absolutely. And if you pay attention to the fact that I told you to add the word critical to all this, it has to do with multiplying the language functions, because when you are critical, it means that you will be able to give information, give your opinion, agree, disagree, and of course students will need grammar and vocabulary for this, which you will find in our materials, of course, but most importantly, what you're going to find is plenty of opportunities for students to actually do something with that grammar and vocabulary, being functional. It's about having units that start with titles that really allow for a lot of discussion, such as, it's not rocket science. When do we use this expression? What's rocket science? What can you see in this picture? One of the characteristics of National Geographic learning materials is the powerful photography. So it's beyond asking them, what can you see? But you should ask them, what do you see in this picture, and what does what you see make you think of, and what do you wonder about this? So it's multiplying the opportunities for language use, and of course students will be so focused on the message they want to convey, and as they do so, of course, as language teachers we will scaffold this, but it's about moving language from the role of being the ultimate goal into being the vehicle to being critical thinkers. Another very important thing that I would like to mention is that in materials for teenagers from National Geographic Learning, you're going to find TED Talks. I would like to know if you're familiar with TED Talks, if you have ever watched a TED Talk, if there is any TED Talk that you particularly remember. Okay, some people say no. So those who say no, I strongly suggest that you go for it after this webinar. In TED Talks, what you're going to find are people, common, regular people who just feel they have something to share. And one of the fantastic things about TED Talks is that these are people who are really passionate about something and that they feel that they have something to share with the world. And you're going to find, and this is the reason why we bring TED Talks into our materials, you're going to see that the fantastic thing about this is that many of them, if not most of them, are not native speakers of English, but they are using English as an international language to actually have an impact on more people. How motivating is that? So I see many of you have a favorite TED Talk. I really like that. So it's really very important to bring role models. By introducing TED Talks into teenagers' classes, you will be able to expose students to the natural use of language. Many of these TED Talks are people telling stories, and you know how powerful it is to tell stories. So students will have exposure to authentic use of language, topics that are relevant, and of course, after and before the TED Talks, they will have multiple opportunities to agree, disagree, and even think about what they know about the topic of the TED Talk. So I really suggest that you can give this a try, because speaking of motivating class materials, this is really an asset. It's really very important that we provide teenagers with the opportunity to think critically by expressing their own views and having the opportunity to listen to the views of others. Of course, follow-up discussions, it's really very powerful. It appeals to emotions, and just teenagers, they will surprise you with how much they can do before, during, and after these TED Talks. So I've had such amazing experiences that I really feel like encouraging you all to go through these with your teenager students. It's about bringing photography that is high impact. We teachers, we language teachers, have always worked with photographs, but most of the time we ask our students, what can you see? And if you ask, what can you see, which is a good question to ask, you are just asking your students to describe what's in the picture. But if instead of asking, or apart from asking, what can you see, you engage them in routines such as, what can you see, what do you think, and what do you wonder? You will be multiplying the opportunities for students to use lots of functions of language, as well as really showing you the connections that they are making between the photographs and their own lives. And you will see that we understand that they are also language learners, so there will be plenty of scaffolding when it comes to language use. It's really very important that our teenagers have lots of opportunities for interaction, interacting in pairs, interacting in small groups, interaction between the teacher and the students. We want noisy classrooms in the sense that we want students to be actively engaged. But it's also really very important that we back up our students with communication skills. So of course we need to spark discussions, and of course if we bring topics of relevance, and if we really use quotes or powerful images or videos, our students will feel really like participating very actively and have their voices heard. So as you can see in National Geographic learning materials for teenagers, there will be explicit opportunities for interaction, sometimes in pairs, sometimes in small groups. Sometimes teenagers will have the possibility to choose what classroom dynamics they are more comfortable with, but definitely there will be lots of opportunities for being critical thinkers and critical speakers, and even critical writers, as I will show you in a minute. So this is what I was mentioning before, and these are the examples I wanted to show you. For example, here it says critical thinking. Talk with a partner. Which job did you say was more extreme in reading B? Do you still feel that way? So it's like going over their own thinking. What qualities do you think a person needs to do extreme jobs? So they are thinking about it. They are going back to their initial thoughts before reading, and then they go back to their thoughts now after reading. And then of course they will be engaged in a writing task because they have to develop writing, but it's not going to be unreal or fake as it was a long time ago, as it was when I studied English, but it's real. It's something that can actually be sent to somebody real in response to a real issue. Teenagers are very demotivated sometimes when they feel that they are writing just for the teacher and for the sake of a grade. And our teenagers are constantly asking us, why am I learning this? How is this ever going to help me? So if they feel that we teachers are bringing real issues, real people, real places, real problems, they will definitely feel more active, and they will feel more motivated to participate. And this is something that I was mentioning before. This doesn't mean that in our materials your students will not have the possibility to grow as language learners. They will be constantly scaffolded to be functional in a language, an international language that they need, so that whatever they engage in, they can communicate with more and more people. Whatever project they design can reach more and more people, because we are using a language, a global language, to make more impact, as we said before. And something that you're going to notice in our materials for teenagers is that we have an approach to functional language. So it means that we are focusing, of course, on grammar and vocabulary, but most importantly on what is it that teenagers will be able to do with that. So as you can see in the examples, we are teaching them the language for describing and comparing things, because a critical thinker does that. We are teaching them the language to talk about events in the past, because you need it as you communicate. We are teaching them the language to to do things. And you will see that on the book pages, there are plenty of opportunities for individual response to the topics, discussing in pairs, like think, pair, and share routines, and lots of opportunities for students to engage in discussions that are powerful. And something which is related to what we said before, definitely bringing role models to the classroom. People who are already doing fantastic things for the planet. One of the missions of National Geographic Learning is really inspiring teenagers, bringing people who are doing fantastic things and discussing their quotes, and really having the opportunity to see, to listen to them, and to read what they said, read about their work. So this is something that you will also find in materials. And as I was saying before, and I'm coming to an end to leave a couple of minutes in case there are questions, lots of opportunities for students' choice and voice, engaging students in projects that will not only allow us to see whether they can use the structures and vocabulary, because of course these are materials for teaching English to teenagers, but it's beyond that. It's really materials where language is a vehicle to an end. So you're going to find in all the materials for teenagers plenty of opportunities for them to be real agents of change. So this is like zooming in. For example, students will have choose an activity. So we are giving them the opportunity of choice. You know, the teenagers like feeling that everything is that they are controlling like the whole thing. So they will choose whether they want to work independently or work in pairs or work in groups. Sometimes they will have the opportunity to choose how is it that they want to communicate whatever they have worked on with their groups. So there are plenty of opportunities, and most of the materials, as you are saying, and I'm reading this has been an amazing group of participants. I thank you so much. All the topics will allow teenagers to take a look at their inner world, but also connect to the world outside. They will feel that they have a voice and that they are helped to communicate that voice. They will have lots of opportunities for collaboration with others. They will have opportunities for choice. There will be explicit teaching in these materials of critical thinking skills that they need for life. They will have opportunities to explore how they feel or what they know, and also how others feel and what others know. And they will, of course, engage in creativity and communication as they go unit after unit and topic after topic. So today in the morning, I rounded up my webinar saying that I strongly believe that there cannot be any language without content, and that I think that content is the propeller of language. So it's definitely about preparing our teenagers for the future. I really want to thank you all for being there, and I would like to devote these last minutes. No, thank you so much. I would like to devote these last minutes to see if there's anybody who would like to share a question. We would really recommend that you can take a look at our materials. We strongly believe that we are providing teachers with materials for really developing our students as global citizens and being the agents of change, and teenagers who will definitely be the creators of a more sustainable future. Oh, yes, Emily's answering that for me. The textbooks that we showed here are Impact, Time Zones, and Perspectives from National Geographic Learning. I really hope, if you're not familiar with the materials, that you can really take a look, and you're going to find all the principles of global citizenship education and education for sustainable development that we discussed today. Oh, Karen, good for you.
Okay. Thank you so much.
This has been a very active group of teachers. I'm so happy. Good for you all.
Yes, we will be giving the presentation out we'll be sending along the PDF of the slides, and it will also be on our website as well too. And so we'll link to the recording of this webinar. Wonderful. I don't think there's any more
Great.
questions, so I can just wrap up now.
Thank you so much.
Great.
Yeah.
And thank you, Luciana, so much.
Oh, there's an interesting question there. Yeah, we do have adult versions to these texts. That's an interesting question, Emily. What do you
Yes,
think?
there's definitely ones that continue part of the National Geographic learning family for adult learners too. Yep, and I can definitely put our link to our website in here if you're interested in learning more. But thank you everyone for attending today, and Luciana, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
And
Thank you.
just to look, these were some of the books from National Geographic Learning that Luciana went over today and used some examples from. But I really hope what you took away from this is something new that you can apply to your teaching practice with your teens to really help motivate them through the content that you're using, and that there's just a practical takeaway for you. So thank you so much, Luciana, for a wonderful presentation, and thank you everyone for joining us and for taking an hour out of your day to be with us. As we wrap up here, just so you know, we will be sending along a certificate for joining us today and the recording, as well as a link to the slides, as I mentioned. You'll get that in about 3 business days. And yes, if you're interested in talking, see a couple questions about our products to a local representative, you can find that on our website through the Contact Your Rep link and just clicking on the country you're in. You can definitely speak to someone locally if you have more specific questions too. But thank you for joining us. We do have more webinars coming up for teaching young learners, teaching teens, and adults too. And you can definitely view our old archive of webinars. We have several from Luciana on there, so be sure to check those out on our website as well too. And subscribe to the InFocus blog. We'd love for you to join our community. Great, so thank you everyone. I'm going to direct you all to a survey now just to hear your feedback from this session. If you have any questions, you can always email us at ngl.webinars@cengage.com, but we're so happy you could join us here today. All right, bye everyone. Bye, Luciana.
Bye.